Recording. Hi all, and welcome again to another Scope community meeting. We have new faces today, or new names at the very least. We have Ali. We have a call from a phone number. I didn't quite get the name. We have Neil. So maybe we can start with introducing the new people who joined the call. Ali, would you mind introducing yourself, please? Ali, you're muted.
Yeah, hello, sorry. Actually, it's not working, my system. Yeah, I work myself in the Kavali. I work for Maya Data as a UI developer.
And what is your interest in Scope, if I may ask?
I like your UI. I just want to know more about your UI, how it's working, and the writing good code.
All right, great. Hello, Ali. Well, we have Neil. Neil, would you mind introducing yourself and saying why you're interested in Scope?
So yes, my name is Neil. I do product management here at WeaveWorks, so I think the interest in Scope is obvious. Brian actually is the person probably day-to-day more involved. I'm just here curiosity-wise to see what the community thinks of Scope, because we obviously productize it into WeaveCloud.
All right, great. Thanks, Neil. Uma is asking, how do I add agenda items to the document? That's a fair question. So far I haven't given rights to everybody, but my idea was I sent an email weekly reminding about the upcoming meeting to the mailing list, the Scope mailing list, which is included in the community meetings document. So I think it would be a good idea to answer that email with the topics you want to add. Or actually, Uma was also suggesting maybe sending them on Slack. That would work as well. Again, for now, I'm the only one with right access to the document, but I would really appreciate if people could chip in. In fact, can somebody volunteer to take notes, and I'll very happily give them writing access, because I cannot really multi-thread speaking and writing at the same time. I'm really bad at that. Can somebody volunteer to do that, please?
I can do it, Fonz, if you like.
All right, I'll give you right access, Brian.
Thank you.
Anyways, in the meantime, I was going through the new faces on the new names. We have somebody called. Actually, we had somebody calling from a phone, and I didn't quite catch his name. He was introducing himself before. Would you mind going ahead and telling us a little bit about yourself and why you're interested in Scope?
Sure. So this is Prashant Wati. I'm joining from Portworx right now, and I'm interested because we're looking at collaborating with the Scope community on our metrics and how we can monitor the open source products with Portworx.
All right. Thank you. We have yet another name, Istio Policy, I guess, working group. I only see Istio Policy W. Would you mind introducing yourself or yourselves if it's multiple people?
Can you hear me? Sorry.
Yeah, we can hear you. At least I can.
Yeah, so sorry. My name's Doug Reed. I work on Istio. I think my account is now linked to the policy working group, and that's why you see that there. I'm interested in Weave scope, primarily from the Istio point of view, and just in terms of getting a better visualization of what's happening in Istio meshes. So that's my interest.
Right, that sounds great.
Just repeat your name for the notes, which I still don't appear to have edit access yet, but I'm taking notes.
I just gave you access, Brian. So you should have received an invite, like in the last 5 seconds.
Cool.
I'll add my name to the chat so you can get it there.
Oh, thank you.
It's Doug, right? Douglas. Is that correct?
Great, Doug Reed, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. So Brian has proposed an item to include in the agenda, which is encouraging members of the community to review PRs. Yeah, well, that would be very highly appreciated. Some people have already worked on new features for Scope. In particular, there was a PR which is being finalized on adding volumes to Scope. And
let's not focus on which PRs. I think.
Yeah, I understand that. I was just trying to say that some people already have the experience to know the code and can review pull requests. So
yeah, I think it's a great way for people to you know, if someone wants to be a member of the community, wants to kind of graduate to becoming a maintainer, then reviewing other people's PRs is a great way to start. Even if you don't know the code, you know, it's a great way to learn, like, okay, why did this person change it that way?
Yeah, I completely agree.
So, yeah, it kind of relates to some of the points that were made in the last meeting, but I realized this one wasn't made, that reviewing a PR is a great way to make a contribution, to learn about the code base, to get into the project. So I would like to encourage everyone to review a PR. You know, you can GitHub, I think, just lets you say, I approve this PR, whether you're a maintainer or not, or you can post LGTM, or you can post comments saying, you know, please explain more about how you did it this way, or isn't this bit going to crash? You know, just feel encouraged to review PRs.
Yes, by all means. I would actually like to ask, in case there may be some people who feel like, oh, I don't know about the project and so on. I would also like to ask on top of that, that in case you're thinking you're having reservations about doing that right away, which we encourage you to do regardless of your familiarity with the project, is there a way in which we can help you to encourage you to do PRs apart from asking you nicely to do so and help us review PRs? Does anybody have any ideas or any concerns they have about that with which we can help?
There was an idea on writing up the architecture document. That's a good way to start. I agree with Brian that, you know, getting started with reviewing PRs is always a good way to learn. And maybe, you know, just getting those documents to be published somewhere will give us a head start on understanding overall architecture. For some of us, or at least for me.
Yeah, I agree that architectural documents would help you make big contributions in terms of things which modify scope end to end and will require you to have the architecture in your head. But I'm not sure how having an architecture of scope would help on reviewing specific code in a PR.
Yes, you know, small PRs definitely don't need all the understanding, right? My comment was mainly on reviewing the bigger PRs. I agree with you. Small PRs anybody can do, and probably, you know,
right.
We will start doing that as well.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. There's already been a few not very big PRs, namely from Brian last week, for which we would have appreciated, you know, some reviews. Most of my time is spent working with the community. As I said, I'm doing this only part-time. So I have time for reviewing and so on, but so far I've been putting the time on organizing these meetings and so on. So I would really appreciate people chipping in to help with that.
Well, so maybe we can have a specific call to action. Are we mostly using the Slack for communication?
So far, it seems that Slack has been the most effective communication channel. I agree.
Well, let's use Slack then. I'd just like to ask people to put themselves forward. Just step up on Slack and say, "I would like to be a PR reviewer," and then next time there's an opportunity, we'll bear you in mind. I mean, people can feel free to review a PR anytime, but maybe you don't know what's the right time. So as a simpler thing, I'd like to invite individuals to just post a message on Slack saying, I'd like to be PR reviewer.
Yeah, that would actually be simpler. So maybe we can even ask right away who would be up for reviewing PRs. Maybe they can volunteer.
Well, we don't need to take the time in the meeting just to get a list of names. We can do that.
Okay. Maybe we can move on to the next topic in the meeting. And that was reviewing actions from last meeting. So there were a couple of actions, actually 3 actions, which I took up upon myself, and that was we reviewed the front end issues, actually together with Rakesh. Rakesh helped out and handpicked a few issues which would be good first issues, and I updated that. Also, I updated the documentation of the labels, and I added quite a few good first issue and help needed. So for those of you who want to contribute in the project, they should already know where to start from in an easy way without needing to have the architectural documents, which will would help with more complicated features and so on. But I think all those issues that I labeled with good first issue don't really require any special documentation apart from familiarity with scope. Another issue I brought up last week was integration tests in external PRs. I didn't really have time to look into that deeply. I checked the bots available on for GitHub and so on, and nothing really covered what we needed out of the box. And I stopped there. I would like to hear if somebody has any ideas of how we can use a bot to merge to test PRs in forks. Because right now the problem is, just to recap from last week, the problem is that the current integration tests run in Weaveworks infrastructure, and we don't want to let any fork access that infrastructure just like that. So we would like to have a bot which you can tell, please run the integration tests on this PR, and then based on the result we can merge or not, or fix the integration tests. All right. Unless anybody has any other topics, the next item in the list was discussing the roadmap of scope. I think that Uma, we stopped the last meeting when Uma was discussing what he would like to see in the roadmap, I think. So maybe Uma, can you recap on what you said, and maybe that will lead to others chipping in and mentioning what they want to see in scope?
Sure, Pons. Thank you. So the basic idea that we thought where we got introduced to Scope was Scope does a great job of visualizing the pods and containers, mostly the compute, right, and networking. We being a storage project, we felt it could it could extend all those nice capabilities into the storage. A lot of it is in the works in Kubernetes itself, and we wanted to make sure that the complete story, networking, compute, as well as storage, would be a good way to put all these things together. And first step was just do whatever is already available in Kubernetes in terms of volumes, relationships, and all. And then comes more complex scenarios of extending beyond given clusters. How can we correlate some of this data across clusters? As far as I understand, the current implementation of Scope is really about tying up all the data among the nodes in a cluster together, right? And it does not have intelligence to correlate the data across clusters. For example, try to use federation concepts of Kubernetes, right? That I felt maybe could be a long-term or medium-term roadmap item, how to extend Scope's logic or intelligence to go beyond a given Kubernetes cluster.
Yes, Scope doesn't care how many Kubernetes clusters you have. What you might want to do is change the backend architecture to be multi-process. Mm-hmm. So right now you can feed information from 100 clusters into one Scope, and then it'll integrate them all. That will, as I say, that'll chug a bit in terms of CPU usage, and it will also be quite hard to read on the screen. So I think I'd agree that facilities in scaling the back end and scaling the UI would be good, but there's nothing conceptually missing for multiple clusters because it doesn't care how many clusters you have.
Okay.
Yeah. I subscribe to what Brian said. Yeah, I think the biggest difficulty there is the higher resources, and also have a way in the UI to distinguish the different clusters. Because assuming that the clusters don't talk to each other, what you will see is two disconnected graphs, at least two disconnected graphs in any view you have, which would constitute the nodes from the different clusters. And you may want to have a way, most probably you want to have a way to tell them apart, right?
Okay. No, that's great to know. As I just need to remind everyone that I'm not up to speed on the architecture of Scope. Yeah. So thanks,
in Scope. Yeah. Sorry to interrupt. Please go ahead.
No, it's good to know that as a fundamental backend pieces, all the things are in place for supporting multiple clusters. It's probably some logic in the UI to identify which cluster a given thing belongs to, and scalability may be the only areas that we need to look after.
Yeah. So there's a small introduction of about Scope's architecture in the documentation. We don't need to go deeply into it, but it basically explains that Scope, the two main components of Scope are the probes or agents, which run in each separate cluster, and then the application, which will merge information gathered by those agents, which we call reports, into a single consistent report, and we'll display them in the UI. Nothing prevents you from running agents from two different Kubernetes clusters against the same Scope application.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Okay. Thanks. Does anybody want to chip in and bring up ideas and tell us what they would like to see in the roadmap? All right. Okay. So those are the topics I had in the list for today. Unless anybody else brings any other topics, I guess we should call it a meeting. Any other topics, concerns, issues to discuss? Eric was gonna say something. Sorry, please go ahead.
No, I was just echoing that I think this is a great start, and that Uma and team and we have a follow-up just to have further conversations, so maybe we can bring back more next time. I don't mean to steal other people from having their voice. I just wanted to echo what Uma said.
No, that makes sense, actually.
And the comment about the backends, we see that in some other places. Oftentimes what we see is users label their clusters. And what that would just really mean is, as long as we have ways to gather labels, I don't mean to say scalability of backend is not a problem, but as long as we can organize by labels, maybe we just need a strongly typed label, and then we can know what the cluster identity is based on that. Strongly typed in scope sense, not necessarily in a Kubernetes sense. So my comment is labels can be used to organize some of these topics when it comes to visualization.
Yeah, I agree. Well, we don't need to get into a design, but it would be better if we had some information source that didn't need to be explicitly added by the infrastructure maintainer in order to tell clusters apart. That would be ideal. I don't know if that exists in Kubernetes, to be honest.
Well, it does, because you can ask for the cluster info, and kubectl cluster info will just tell you the cluster name, or maybe it's I get some of the commands confused. So that's there. I more meant to say in a visualization perspective. If you're walking, when you're walking through the UI, if you can filter by labels, then you will be able to have a UI pivot that helps you walk through any depth.
Right.
I hear you about the point that you don't have to have it be a piece of metadata, so that's fair.
Yeah.
Let me separate that point out and clarify that I think if the UI can pivot and filter by labels, that will allow it to visualize walking through different levels or different scopes, to make a pun, and then cluster info will give you the cluster identity.
Yeah, filtering by labels is definitely useful. In fact, there was a PR already in place for that, but we reviewed it, and the author never implemented addressed the review comments.
Okay.
So actually, maybe that would be something nice to work on if you guys are interested. You would just need to take over the PR, and we will be very happy to merge. I would be very happy to merge.
Okay, so then let me bring that topic to my conversation with Uma in an hour or half an hour, and then we'll come back.
I'll send the PR to the scope channel so that you have it.
I dropped it into the meeting notes.
And
right.
One other thing we can do is, if you're willing to give people access to a section of your doc or somewhere else, if we can just contribute agenda items before the meeting, and then you can just have just to help make it easy for you, you can say, hey, let's just circulate it in a Dory sense.
I would be super happy to do that. And I'll give you access.
It's totally your call. Yeah.
No. The problem is I don't want to simply open it.
Yeah, give write
rights to everybody on the internet.
So maybe just to the meeting invite, and if you want, you could even put it as a separate doc, agenda doc for a while or something. Unless there's a better tool, I'm proposing very rudimentary mechanisms. So just to offload though more. So.
Right. Sure. Actually, I don't mind adding the items for scope if you write them on the channel. Right now, my problem is the opposite, right? People not adding enough topics. So I'll let you know when that becomes a problem. I'll be happy to have that problem.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, Gabriel. Thanks, Alfonso.
Okay, no problem. Anybody else wants to bring up any topics or concerns or anything else? All right, then I guess we'll call it a meeting. Thanks a lot, everyone, for coming, and I'm very happy to see new faces today. Thanks a lot, and I'll see you next week. Let's keep chatting on Slack about this. Thanks,
Thank
Brian,
you,
for
everyone.
putting together the notes.
Bye.
Thank you.